Hello. So this is going to be very low quality, very rambly, probably very long. Probably will be a lot of cuts, abrupt, unnatural cuts because I cannot speak in a cohesive, singular, smooth sentence to save my life. But this is a Hermit year collective. So 2025 is ruled by the Hermit card. How you find that out is you just add up the numbers in the year. So 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 is 9. The number 9, the ninth major arcana card is the Hermit. I'm not going to get into what the Hermit is, what it means in this reading. This is just an energy check-in, a reading on what this year has to offer us, what to learn, what energy we're being invited into, things to keep in mind, to be aware of, which you could, look to the Hermit for that. I wanted to do a reading. I actually kind of created a spread on my own accidentally when I did this for myself, for my personal year card, which if you're curious how to do your own personal yearly card, you'll take your birthday. So mine is 3/8, March 8th, and you'll add those digits to the year. So like mine is like 3 plus 8 plus the 2025 is 11. So my card is Justice. So you'll do that. So I created this like talking spread. So basically we have 6 cards. Each grouping of 2 is talking to each other. It's really just a way for me to see how everything is intermingling. So you have 3 major themes and points. The sort of main 2 that everything is centered around is the 9 of Swords reversed and the 4 of Wands reversed. I'll show you the cards. This is what it looks like upright. This is what we're working with. In case you're a tarot nerd, this is Mars and Gemini. This is Aries and Venus. Do I have them memorized? No. So what we're talking about, can I put my glasses on? Sorry, you're gonna have to deal with the glare. I'm getting a headache. I need my glasses on. So I'm going to sort of tiptoe around this first message because I want to do it, not tiptoe, but be very careful and intentional with my words, because there's a lot of validating I want to do, and there's a lot of nuance here, and I want to make sure I'm expressing it correctly. So with the 9 of Swords, when that comes up, it's often telling us that we are overthinking, we're overstressing, that the things we're worried about aren't as big and as serious and as scary as we think they are. So I'm trying to think of how to word this. Keep in mind throughout this reading, we are talking collectively, but I'm also going to try to apply it individually and what that might look like. And obviously there's going to be so many different ways that this could be expressed. But we're kind of talking about the macrocosm and the microcosm and how they are reflections of each other. So with the thing of like things being very scary and feeling very scary, the part that I'm wanting to validate is that if things feel scary to you, that's all that matters, is that it feels that way and that is real to you. So that is more in regard to like personal things. Like if you're scared about your life's trajectory and where you're going and your finances and your worth and your skills and anything you could apply it to personally, that fear is real, and so I'm validating that. And then even in the sense of the collective, things are scary. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it in the world. It is scary right now. But because it is talking to the 4 of Wands reversed, a thing that we are being reminded of while in this fear, while in this space of just like panic and dread and catastrophizing, is to not catastrophize and to not let our joy be stolen from us. 2 big things that are coming through here is that joy and rest are very radical. And you might, to hearing that statement, you might roll your eyes. And that's fair. If you would just grant me the benefit of the doubt to explain where I'm coming from. And if you're like, yes, then you know where I'm going with this. As a disabled and chronically ill person, rest has been extremely radical for me. I'm someone where over the years, I have gotten more and more and more sick. I work 5 days a week, like 3 hours a day, and that is killing me. That is already so much that I can barely handle. And it is constantly keeping my body in a perpetual state of ruin and pain. And my life is just sort of at a standstill as my pain has debilitated me. So saying no, saying I can't do that, I have to rest, is a matter of like extreme importance for me. And the reason that it's radical is because most people around me, and I'm using my personal experience because that's what I know and how I know how to relate to things. Most people around me, people I don't know, people I know on the periphery, people I care about deeply, who I think care about me to the best of their ability, or I thought cared about me, or that I cherished growing up. All of these different people have judged me and belittled me, said I'm lazy, I'm unappreciative, I don't want help, I don't want advice, because of knowing what I need, knowing what helps, what doesn't. Because when you're like chronically ill, so many people will be like, have you tried yoga? Have you tried this? But I like, and if you're not disabled or chronically ill in a disabling way specifically, just don't ever give people advice on their health, because you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you just don't. So many people have tried to tell me, literally almost everyone who's able-bodied has told me to do yoga, and I did it over and over and over, and I hurt myself more and more because I have a hypermobility disease. So it's the worst thing I could possibly do. So that's just one example. So the reason it is radical is because it is against the norm. It is against what capitalism wants. It's against what fascism wants. It's with this empire of America and just empire in general wants, what white supremacy wants. It wants you to put aside your needs. It wants you to put aside your rest. It wants you to put aside your joy, your desires, your passions, your love, your care and compassion. It wants you to put that all aside to be a tool, to be a profit machine for these other people to leech on. So when you choose to do any of those things, to be compassionate, to, if you to go against these like ideas, like if you see a homeless person and there's so many people who'll be like, they're gonna spend it on drugs, they're gonna spend it on alcohol. If you say, who cares? This is a person in need and I'm going to help them. That is radical. All of these things are radical. And I don't ever want to minimize what a radical act is, because I think there are some things where people are like, say that thing, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but they'll like say something is radical, but it's really done in a way to shirk actual labor and like actual responsibility, personal responsibility. I'm trying to think of an example that happened recently. It's on the tip of my tongue. A conversation that I had recently was like the word unhoused versus homeless. And I think there's a very big nuanced conversation to have there. But a lot of people I had talked to that I trusted and I love to hear the opinions of are saying there's a lot of like specifically white liberals, I would say, and I'm sure other people who will like use the word unhoused to be like, I'm so aware and I'm so helpful, and then like actually not do anything material to help these people other than being like, I'm socially conscious and say unhoused instead of homeless. And so there's things like that where it's very performative. But when it comes to like things that push against the norm, to taking rest, to feeling joy, to taking time off of work when you're sick, to masking, things that are outside of the norm and outside of the status quo that people kind of side-eye you for, and it's coming from a place of compassion for others or for yourself, for this planet, for the world, that is radical. That is revolutionary. And the more that we do that on an individual basis, the more the people around us who maybe aren't doing those things will be like, maybe I should do that. And they'll start questioning things. If you're at work and you're sick and your coworker who never takes a sick day sees you be like, I'm going home, I'm sick. Like, I'm not getting people sick. I'm not getting myself more sick and wearing myself down. I don't care what the boss says. I'm fucking going home. and they're that person who never takes a sick day and like gets everyone sick and works themselves to death, that might just plant a seed in their mind of like, oh, like I should be taking care of myself. Why am I not taking care of myself? Because we collectively do not see how fucking brainwashed we are. Like, not at all. We are like little capitalism machines, and it is really shocking to just see how normalized it is. And I mean, yeah. So that's the main chunk of this year, is this like radical compassion, and that's going to come up here again, but taking care of ourselves and not letting our hope be beaten out of us. Hope is the biggest thing you can have. I don't know if I said it before, but one of the biggest tools, two of the biggest tools of fascism and like this capitalistic empire is fear and misinformation. And I personally believe that's why we're seeing all of these like executive orders being thrown out left and right every single day. And they're just the worst things you could have possibly imagined. It's like a fucking hellscape Mad Lib. And you're just like, what are we going to do today? Oh, set the ocean on fire, pour all of our oil, like it's just into the ocean. Like it's just maddening. And I believe this is on purpose. It is to make us lose hope. It is to make us give up. It's to make us not even try, because when we don't have hope, we don't try. If we don't have hope for a better future, we're not going to try to create a better future. And when we're scared, we freeze. We get, we do start spiraling into this doom, into this catastrophizing. Giving up and being like, there's no hope, there's nothing we can do, what can I do? I'm just one person. Well, you are solidifying the fact that there is nothing you can do by doing nothing. The small things you can do matter. I lost my train of thought a little bit, but the biggest thing we can do is to not give hope. Oh, on the personal, like individual basis, the smallest things you do matter. If you have $5 to spare and you send that to someone who's asking for money, or give it to someone on the street who needs a meal, that is making a difference in someone's life. Every small act of kindness and compassion and community care, and just care for another human being's life, or a living being's life, it matters, and it adds up, and it ripples out into the other people who witness you in that. So that's the first bit. The second set of cards that we have talking are the Seven of Pentacles and the Six of Swords. I'll show that to you too. Here is the Seven of Pentacles, Six of Swords, the bane of my existence. Not really, a little bit. I pull it all the time. We have Saturn and Taurus, and then we have Aquarius and Mercury. So this is where I'm going to get on the high horse here eventually in this chapter, and I might lose some people, and you might feel activated. Honestly, if you're watching this, you know me probably, so you might not. But if you don't know me and you stumbled on this, you might feel activated here. You might feel defensive. If you can, sit with it. Stay the course. If you feel like you're able to, I'm not going to attack you, I promise. I'm making this sound scary. But I want to acknowledge that some of that might come up, and that's valid, and I'm not shaming you. I am not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm not trying to call you stupid. We don't use that kind of language here. But we're talking about mistakes. We're talking about not letting your past define you, but choosing to make better decisions for the collective, for ourselves, which ripples out into affecting the collective. There's sort of a main line that I'm going to start with that I wrote down. So when we're talking about mistakes in the past, and we'll get into what those could be here and what I want to talk about with regard to those mistakes, I wrote down accountability, not self-pity, understanding, not excuses. So the main thing that's coming through here that I'm just feeling really called to talk about is masking in regards to the ongoing pandemic. And I'm going to be very vulnerable here, and I'm going to put myself on blast, okay? Before, I think 2023, I had stopped masking, I would say, for about like the end of 2022 to the end of 2023. I'm not going to put the excuses out there. I'm not going to put the reasons, because there are reasons and excuses, and the way we formulate those and express those are different. The bottom line was I was ignorant, both purposefully, both situationally with my environment, the people I was around. But I slowly started, specifically online, surrounding myself with more of the disabled community on Twitter, the immunocompromised and chronically ill people on Twitter, and sort of, engaging more with the community and more with like mutual aid things, and just really kind of taking more of an active role online rather than passive. And I learned a lot, and I have a lot of guilt and just sadness over all the people I could have possibly and maybe have harmed by not masking, by not protecting myself and not protecting others. And so if you have not masked since 2020, 2021, I don't want you, I'm not saying, I'm not attacking you. There's a lot to acknowledge here, because the government, the United States government, I'm sure as well as other governments have done, but especially the United States, has done such a good job at minimizing this pandemic, at minimizing the oncoming kind of beginning pandemic of bird flu that's going on. Their complete lack of care, of delegation, of control, of anything, the way they were so hard with their misinformation that now being chronically ill or just going to an ER is like you're endangering your life, especially if you're immune compromised, especially if you already, are prone to getting sick. There are people literally going to the hospital and dying because of COVID that they got while they were there. So I am not fully placing blame on you. I'm not saying this is all your fault for you not masking. There are a lot of reasons why you might have been here. You might not have the information. I'm very much aware of our social bubbles, because when I wasn't engaging with that side of Twitter, I wasn't seeing that information. Even in Google is fake at this point. There's like, if you search Google, 95% of it is AI. It's fake. Like it's horrible. It's so bad. Side note, I really plan on like trying to investigate and find better browsers if they're out there, and I think we should collectively do that, because Google is just a propaganda machine at this point. So in terms of accountability, not self-pity, there is a difference between, like I was saying, I feel there's a lot of like guilt I have, and I can say that, but I'm not going to harp on it. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm such a piece of shit. Because what does that do? If I am wallowing, if I am hating myself, and then a lot of the times when people are in this like self-pity mode, it's not even that, it is anger, it's lashing out, it's refusing to see the truth, it's refusing to educate yourself. Let's try to put that aside. Listen, you can process that, you can journal about it. That's not what matters right now. What matters is protecting yourself and protecting others, protecting the elderly, protecting the children in your life. I was gonna go on a tangent about just like the kids that are in my life and how I have just seen them be sick nonstop over and over and over again. And it breaks my heart, because I already see them like feeling unwell and feeling like I did when I started getting sick with like chronic illness, which I think was started by a virus. We're needing to take this accountability and understanding, not excuses. Like I said, I understand for myself why, I did have a lack of information. There weren't people around me at the time, because I was very isolated, getting very, very sick with my chronic health issues, probably worsened by COVID. And so there was a lack of education. I wasn't. Different hair jump scare. I'm editing this. Why does it look like that? I'm editing this video, and I was realizing I was doing the thing that I was talking about, where I was giving you the reasons, but there was a part of the accountability that I did not take accountability for. And as well, yes, there was a period where I was ignorant. There was also a period between then and when I sort of started seeing people more around me being like online, especially like, hey, you should mask, you should mask, you should mask, where I was scared. I was scared to mask. I was more scared of being seen as weird, getting stared at, because I live, in the South where almost no one masks, and getting stared at and being weird and being confronted and like aggression by people, which I have had some of. I've been lucky enough in being white, probably face less aggression than someone else, a person of color might. But I did let that fear and that worry and like wanting to fit in, I let that control me and did harm by not masking. And that is the part that people, and I clearly did because I didn't even mention it. Like, to be fair, it was like 4 a.m, but still, that's the part that we get triggered by. And then we start getting defensive because we're like, we don't want to acknowledge the harm that we've done. It's hard to reckon with. It is, but you aren't a bad person. You did a bad thing. You're not a bad person because you've made mistakes, is basically what I was getting at. So one of my birth cards is justice, and that's also my card of the year. And a big theme of justice, of the justice card, is that in order to right a wrong, in order for injustice to come to justice, is you have to look at it in the face. You have to admit that this injustice is happening, and if it's relevant, you have to admit to yourself and to others what part you played in that injustice. This video is already super long. I just wanted to jump in and add that and like actually take accountability. A big part of like when I make tarot readings is I just always use myself as an example because that is what I know and that's how I relate to things and relay these sorts of messages. So I just wanted to be like, yeah, no, it wasn't just my ignorance. It was my like chosen ignorance. And then being slightly more informed and still choosing the wrong choice. And we all do these things in a million different ways. We are all ignorant in some ways, wise in others, and sometimes we just make bad choices. But the thing is that it's never too late. And I think I harp on that later on. So, but that's not an excuse. I'm not going, if someone calls me out, if someone chooses to not be in community with me, to not associate with me because I chose to stop masking during those years, that is well within their right, and I do not have the right to be upset about that. If that is someone's value, if that is something that someone has decided, I want to only surround myself with people who have never stopped masking for whatever their reasoning may be, I need to respect that and not get mad about it. And I'm saying this too, especially to white people and like non-black people, but more so white people, because that's who I'm talking, that's who I am to talk to. I've seen this as well, where, I've had mutuals who, on Twitter, who I've been kind of, I guess, we've followed each other for a bit, and they've, like, unfollowed me, and I've been like, hey, like, I hope everything's okay, you don't have to reach out, but I just wanted to see if, if I did anything wrong, if there's anything I can do, to, like, mitigate this harm, or, like, remedy this harm, and, this one person was like, honestly, I don't remember, but I'm just taking precautions and like not being in community with white people, because especially in this like COVID aware space, because I've been burned before. And like if this had been like 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said anything to them, but I probably would have had these like spiky feelings come up of like, well, like I'm good, like I'm not a bad person, like just the white supremacy that we have to excavate out of us and throw away. And so I bring that up to say, like, if someone chooses to not associate with us because of who we are, because of what we've done, because of who our ancestors are, that is within their choice, and we do not have the right to push their boundaries. Or we can have feelings about it, but we don't have the right to project that onto them and make that their problem. So, if you stop masking, you might have people you come across who are like, I don't want to associate with you. The harm that you have done hurts me too much to associate with you. And that's just a reality that we have to accept. And not even just with masking, but with anything, especially when you are like the occupier, the oppression. I was going to say oppressioner. That's not the word. When you are a part of the system of oppression that is oppressing people people have the right to not want to be around you. And you can't take it as a personal attack, because if you are again centering yourself. And that's the whole issue in the first place. So kind of a side tangent, but it was feeling called to come through. And even if we're talking about things that are not about masking, if we're talking about overall in this year, that was just a soapbox that I had to get on, that I felt called to get on. If we're talking just about mistakes that you've made, if you're, maybe a relationship where you made mistakes, or it could be, a romantic one, a platonic one, a familial one. Again, accountability, not self-pity, understanding, not excuses. You can understand where you were coming from and why you did the things you did, without just being like, poor me, I'm such a loser, I'm such a piece of shit. I call that cis white man disease. And you can understand where you're coming from, but you can still take accountability, even if you're not actually taking accountability with that person. If that person doesn't want to communicate with you, or it's just like not that season of y'all's life right now, anything in that regard. It can be applied to so many situations, but you can choose to do better. You can always choose to do better. It is never too late. I think we feel so triggered when we are called out for doing wrong, for doing harm, then we are so black and white in our thinking, where it's like if we're shown to be ignorant about something, we're like, I'm a bad person. And even if we're not thinking this is what's coming up, because people immediately go to anger, into frustration, into malice, and we're just like, I'm a bad person, I'm a piece of shit, you think I'm stupid, you think I'm like all of these things. And it's like, no, you just made a mistake. You were just ignorant in this thing. And the only way you do become an asshole is that if you completely refuse to face the thing you did, to take accountability, or to do better. That's when it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if someone is like, hey, you hurt me, even if you do not like see how you did that yet, pause and be like, I'm so sorry that I hurt you. Whether that was my intention or not, I'm very sorry. Would you like to talk about this and see if we can, if I can atone, if we can figure this out, if I can help you to feel better. So the last part I sort of already talked about accidentally. We have the Empress and the Five of Swords. Find that for you. Empress and the Five of Swords, which is Venus, and then also Venus and Aquarius. And this was talking about the choosing that compassion, that radical compassion for yourself, for others. I already went on a tangent, so I'm not going to rehash it too much. But there was one other aspect. When you choose compassion, when you choose revolutionary compassion, again, like pushing against the status quo and being like, oh, I will mask, I will I will help these people, even though others might like judge them and be like, oh, they're an addict, they're this, they're that, they're lazy. When you choose to push against that and lead with compassion, you will isolate yourself for a while. You will feel alone. And I think that is the biggest part, I believe, of why people don't push back against the status quo. Our animal brain wants to fit in. We need to like remember, especially as we're like, we go up the scale of privilege, we're not living in the hunter-gatherer times. You're not going to be eaten by the pack for pushing back against the status quo. You might get some weird looks, people might be rude to you, and then obviously as we scale down the privilege totem pole, you can face violence. So I want to like handle that with care and like validation. And I'm not saying if you ever feel like something is unsafe for you, I don't want you to feel shame or like judgment or self-hatred or guilt about that, no matter what that looks like. But if you are able to do anything in this scope, in this conversation, there will be isolation. I have lost friends of people who don't mask because I am so passionate about it and I don't want to be around people who are willing to endanger my life. And even with the people that I have no choice but to still interact with, family, some family, or that I want to have a relationship with, and I know that it's nuanced and it's complicated and that they are just of a different time, that they're ignorant in some way, they don't fully get it, or they're just not, they're not able to push past that like status quo, and the fear of pushing back against the status quo. There is an intangible, invisible isolation of feeling not cared for, when you have voiced a lot of times, so many times to people like, hey, and we're just going to use the example of not masking, but this could be anything. This is personally relevant to me. Like, hey, if I get on this like medication that's really going to save my life, I'm going to be more susceptible and I could get sick and die very easily. And they were still refusing and like don't care to mask. It is very isolating. It puts this invisible wall around you and these people, and it limits the connection and care and love that you can feel from them.
Popping back in one more time. So I was using this example of masking, but I wanted to make sure I sort of touched on something else and other things that this could sort of lend itself to, or this isolation of choosing, the isolation that happens when you choose radical compassion. So like, if we're talking politics, it can be isolating you from like your family or your friends. I have a friend who like I had a friend who was like flying planes for ICE detention centers, and I've just kind of fallen back from that. I don't, that's not cool with me if you're cool with that as your job. But this could also be when you are having this radical compassion for yourself. So this could be when you're setting boundaries. A lot of people who don't respect you are gonna have a problem with you setting boundaries. They're gonna think it's selfish. They're gonna think, whatever. They're gonna come up with some reason. Having boundaries of how people treat others. If like someone, you're driving by and someone says something like nasty and fat phobic about someone or racist, and you're like, no, actually, that's not cool with me. Now you've just lost another friend. So you are going to lose people. And this happens even just when you are choosing like your true authentic self and your true life. Like if your passion and your dream is to like be a creative and you want to be an artist, you're gonna have people, sorry if it's loud, the air just kicked on. You're gonna have people who don't get it. When you are authentically yourself, when you're choosing compassion, when you're pushing against the status quo, it is always isolating, but it is always worth it. And eventually you get past that as your external reality shifts to match your internal one that's been shaping and taking form. And it's always the internal and then the external first. So like if you decide like, oh, this is my true self and this is what I'm going to do, then your external sort of starts to fall into place. And there's this weird transitionary time.
So this is a very hard, heavy thing. This isn't, but I want to emphasize that it is worth it. And through this, by choosing compassion, you will start to find and align yourself with other people who choose compassion. And you will know love and care and safety in a way you have never known before. Because these are people who choose love, who choose making people feel safe and heard and understood and cared for. Even if they don't, even if they can't put themselves in your shoes, they empathize, even if they can't empathize, they are just compassionate. So I just want to say, like, if you are scared to push back, if you are scared to be yourself, if you are scared to follow what your heart knows is true, and this could even be, if we're talking just on a less intense scale, on a personal scale of like following your dreams, following your passions, your hobbies, the things that light you up. Like, let's say you want to be an underwater basket weaver and everyone's like, that's not a real job. If you want to do it, find a way to do it if you can, and don't let the status quo hold you back. 444, sorry, on the clock. Don't let it hold you back from your true authentic self. I think I'm gonna wrap it up because I've been yapping and I'm getting tired and stuffy. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I am hoping to up like the production quality, and I have a lot in it like planned for more tarot content in the future. I'd love to hear if anything resonated with you. If you're having spiky feelings come up, I would love to like talk with you through that in the comments or anything like that. And just if you listen to this, thank you for sitting through it and engaging with me and being here with me. And I hope you have a really good year. I think overall, like, just to sign it out, this is a spiky year. It's a year, honestly, a bit of isolation, but in a productive way, in a a very introspective way. We are getting to understand ourselves in the world and finding our light and our spark and really like our morals, our values, the core of who we are, getting to know the core of who we are and deciding where we're going to go next. So yeah, I hope you lead with compassion and love for yourself, for others, that you don't give up hope, because that's the only way that these horrible people win, is when we give up hope and we stop helping others and we stop helping ourselves.